PLS or Hex, what you've done is you've essentially invested in, you haven't really invested in Pulsechain, you've invested in Richard Hart. You've essentially lent him your money. And what he's done is he's gone to the market, he's playing the Ethereum game, he's making money on that market, and then he's bringing it back to you. That's how every ecosystem works. And that's the same as our micro ecosystem with PLSB. Our whales right now, they're not market buying our token. They are liquidity provided on Hex, on whatever has high volume. And then they're taking that money back and they're then kind of feeding it back into their personal project. So I think people have to understand that Richard Hart might not necessarily pump this ecosystem until perhaps the market is topped out, because that's where he's making his money. So I think you might see Hex be a bit of a slow burner and PLS be a bit of a slow burner. But then when we get to the last quarter of this bull market, I think that's when you'll see the crazy gains with the Richard Hart ecosystem.
Good take. I have a question for anyone, really. When it comes to taking profits, like say you magically at the top, I'm not saying you sell everything at the top because that's completely difficult. Do you prefer to take profits in Bitcoin, Ethereum, or stable coins, or what is your preference in the mix of taking your profits? And I know it's good to stable up at a certain point, but just kind of curious because Hex McKenzie, she's like popular in our ecosystem, and she was saying she in the past cycles had wished she had taken more profits in Bitcoin and Ethereum. So I didn't know if anyone else had any take on what their plan would be.
Yeah, great question. I think there's a two-part answer to that. I think once you've spent a long time in crypto, right? I think your best scenario is to basically you want to sit in ETH. You want to sit in ETH and then you want to go back to ETH. So really, once you kind of progress, you want to be valuing each token against ETH. But I think for the beginner, that's too much. You shouldn't promote that to the beginner. I think for the beginner, you focus on USDC, you plant your seeds, you have a time scale, and then you basically exit all your positions at the end of that time scale. But if you kind of want to go deeper into the kind of more intermediate type of crypto, then I think, yes, you start to look at your tokens compared to ETH. And then you start to notice patterns where you kind of go, okay, alts are pumping. So let's say ETH is pumping. You sell your PLS, you sell your Hex, you sell all your altcoins. Well, not all of them. You should probably sell 50%. You say 50% you're holding. When you think the market and the altcoins are going to go down, you sell 50% of your holdings, you go back to ETH. And then when ETH kind of peaks, you go back into your alts when they've made their lows. So I don't recommend that to the average person because the average person is not very good at that. So I think what you're talking about is more kind of middle of the road kind of education. But I think a lot of people could get wrecked by that advice, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just kind of like a general perspective.
Ethereum gas fees cannot sustain retail investors coming in. So we need to see this first stage of where we water down the gas fees. But we need to see the first stage of that, I would suggest, this year. Otherwise, Ethereum's dead. Then, which is bullish for us because we have allocation in PLS. So I think unless Ethereum unloads its first wave of reducing fees before November this year, then Ethereum's essentially in a bad place. Then we might see a higher Bitcoin top. But if Ethereum does deal with these fees, then okay, fine, we can keep building on that. And then maybe I think that'll be bullish for all our ERC20s. But then in the worst case scenario, if Ethereum doesn't deal with that, then Richard Hart's products of PLS is a great product, as an insurance bet for us.
Our coins on Pulsechain, probably not eHex, but the chances that Hex does 12 cents. Okay, it did 12 cents. 2021, 2022, 2023. Every single year it had 12 cents or more at certain points, except last year it hit 12 cents. That was the max top. So that just kind of tells me like, wow, we're going into the bull market. You really don't think we could go to 12 cents? We did it 3 years in a row. That's an 800% move, which to me seems really easy. Yeah, we might have a late cycle on Hex, though. You never know. Like, I actually want to map out and say, like, man, we got to get past the Bitcoin cycle concept for Hex. We have multiple bull markets. We had a bull market last year. It went up, like, when you go up 600-700%, and you're calling that a bear? No, that wasn't a bear. That was a bull. It was short and sweet, I guess. But we have short and sweet bulls. Okay, we're different than Bitcoin.
The thing is, though, I shouldn't, at least when it ends, I don't think we'll come back down to the level I put them in at, if you know what I mean. So I think that should be all right. And obviously, you got my T shares building on top of it. So
yeah, it's going to be above that. It's so simple. Like, this is my litmus test because everything hinges on ink. the entire system. You want liquidity to sell your Pulse later, or your Pulsex or Hex? Well, guess what? You get the liquidity because the price is high. So we provide liquidity because we want it, right?
Yeah.
So it's all hinged together on the success of the ecosystem. So it's not a meme coin. I mean, I try to say like, hey, Ink's a meme. I say that because I'm just outbound messaging to the meme coiners. You know what I mean? But hey, it pumped 9x. It pumped better than your meme coin, and it's not. It's got a function.
Yeah, but if we get this get rid of some of it, it could be in effect a Bitcoin. It could be. It's like YFI or YFII. That's the way I'm looking at it. It's a similar sort of supply.
Exactly. Yeah, $30,000 coins.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Why not?
YFI went to $90,000, didn't it?
It was nuts. I was staring at it. Yeah, I actually had some back in the day, but it was just so high, and I noticed I was looking at it compared to Bitcoin, and I was like, this can't stay above Bitcoin's price. So I didn't hold it long.
I made about what 3 months ago, I made $16,000 on Ink. Bought 2 Ink tokens at $8,000, and it just popped overnight.
Yeah, I didn't have any Ink. I just bought the bottom, and now I'm like, you know what? This thing's a flyer. At $1 a coin, at $2 a coin, this thing can pump. So I'm gonna hold some. I don't care.
Break $5 an Ink, and it's $30. If we can get more out of if we can get more of it off the market, it's going to blow $70. $70. What 1618 tag and $70 has got to be $100 on it. $110.
Yeah, exactly. So why wouldn't you grab 1,000 just in case?
Yeah. $100 psychological level. Break 70 straight to 100.
And the funny thing is, its liquidity pool is so paired with Pulsex that they outperformed both Hex and Pulse, which are highly paired together, right? I don't know. It just looked really interesting how Ink and Pulsex kind of like hold each other a little bit better than everything else.
I just wish somebody build something around it.
Not just destroy it. Hex too, though. Hex too. They should build something for Hex. You could do all of them. So that's why it's kind of important to get your T-shares before the end of this year or around towards the end of this year, because then we start into what could be the ultimate liquidation of Hex T-shares for the year and 2 and 3 after that, right? 2025 through 2026 is probably going to be massive OGs. I mean, I want to see RG3 out, Kinetics out, RG3 out, David Fed, all of these guys could liquidate. They could all liquidate their big bags because you know what? Getting old. We good in the beginning of 2025, but then we start to see all of these EESs come through because their 10-year stake is available, and it really picks up 2020. So the people who went 10 years, like the people like the RG3s of the world or the funding gyms or whoever these guys, what they did was they did it before big paydays. So it didn't actually, when they rearranged their T-shares, a lot of them pushed out 10 years in around November-ish of 2020, which puts you out to the fall of 2025 is when they can get out. So that's why I'm saying it starts in December. But December's like the crazy people who, when Hex first came out, they staked 10 years. They were nuts, right? Like, it just came out. They just, 10 years. Let's see what happens. Those guys, okay, they're going to get a chance to exit December this year. But most of the people did short staking.
You're saying December of this year, right? Yeah.
December of this year is the start of what I'm talking about. But most of the people actually were a year later, which pushes you to the end of 2025, which is when the big payday re-staking event happened, where everybody knew I have to stake, and they kind of figured out T-shares by then, and they realized, wait, I got to do a 10-year so I can get which is my big payday bonus. We've got million follower accounts acknowledging and talking about Pulsechain and Richard here and there. They're not saying this is the best thing in the world. We are on trial right now as a community, and the trial is the chart. That's all that society will judge us by. And if we hold true to the chart, if we create a pretty chart, guess what's going to happen? The floodgates are going to open for Pulsechain, for Hex. It's all advertising. Your
let's just hope we got 11
billboard.
months. like you said, so I can get some of that
Well,
money in there.
uh,
Sock money.
well, you do have, of course, you have 11 months.
Well,
Because guess what? Pulsechain's not going anywhere. 5 years from now, it's going to be probably more expensive than in December of this year, I bet. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So you have to think in the longer term time frame. I'm saying 11 months. I'm not saying you're going to get the best price for 11 months. I'm saying for this year, this only amounts to a year and a half of accumulation at the beginning of the launch of the new crypto, which generally the first year and a half, there's a lot of people selling, capitulations, people get bored, and then after the certain point, like right now, most likely we're starting to stabilize. Eventually, the chart starts to go up, but that doesn't mean it's a horrible time to, it's still a good time to buy because we just barely broke even on our stack rate. That means this is the wake up call. It's like, hey, you better get in the ring because, you know, get active. Let's start anyway. I'm saying 11 months. It could be 10x higher by December, but that doesn't mean it's the end of the world because Pulse started so cheap that we have a long runway. Like we could be, dealing with Pulse for 10 years, 15 years. So the greatest opportunities in the first year and a half, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Like it if you don't accumulate some now, that's fine. You could be buying some for the next 3 years. For I don't know. I've been buying Hex for years, right? 2.5 years. I'm still buying Hex. I'm not done yet. I think Hex has been suppressed and pushed down, and so that gives me opportunity. And so I say, okay, fine. I'll keep accumulating, right? Like it's not going anywhere. X is gonna do its contracts duty, regardless of who's involved. And so eventually the impatient are going to leave. And that gives us the second wave of opportunity. I don't know if it's this year, next year. I think, anything around a penny-ish is where a lot of people buy X. So I think you're in a good neighborhood, right, to accumulate. If we're up to 10 cents or $1, you know, I'm holding off at that point because we're already buying, at these low points, so we don't have to. But we'll see. I think, 11 months is a good time frame. It's kind of like an experiment too. It's like, okay, you bought in for the SAC. All right, good. Now it's launched. You buy in, and if our community was buying in right now, the price would look great. That's part of why I'm buying in. I'm pumping my own bags. You know what I mean? It's not just I want more coins. It's I'm helping to create the chart to go up. Whatever little bit I'm doing is making all of my coins more valuable. So it's a double positive, right? Yeah, I'm gonna have more coins. I'm gonna have more gains, but I'm also stabilizing the market, helping to show that we have a community of believers, and that in itself is my advertising to the world. My contribution to the chart. You can't just sit back and say, I'm going to do a 5 stake and then never do anything with X again. And then after 15 years, you're just going to hope and pray that X is going to have a great chart. Like if X chart is horrible for 15 years, guess what? None of these 15-year stakes are going to be worth anything, right?
No,
Nobody's
that's
going to want to
thoughtful.
deal with X.
Yeah, you're being
They're not
thoughtful.
going to want, they won't deal with Hex. They'll be like, Hex has been a dead coin for 10 years. There's no way I'm touching it. And so then you'll have zero liquidity. Of course, magically, if Richard Hart makes it so, you'll still have $1 million sitting there. But good luck with everybody trying to fight for a couple $1 million, when they have 100 million Hex or 20 million Hex. So anyway, the concept is you have to be active to help to create what you believe in, not just somebody else will do it.
Yeah, I like
Like
that,
this.
man. That's very thoughtful. It's considerate. And it's a fresh perspective because I mean, my first stake was a 555, but I
It's
I
good.
didn't really
It's good. It
think.
keeps you here.
Well, it's
But
not that
what if?
keeps me here. The community is what keeps me here. But as far as being an active member, speaking to others and sharing views and opinions, that's what keeps me here. People like you, you sharing an open mind and why you believe what you believe and how you believe what you believe. I think that's more important, and it helps to build and create better belief systems within one another.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you too. I mean, we're all a piece of this. If I personally come across Pulsechain as like an Ethereum, where it's like, hey, what should you have done? Every single person almost messed up Bitcoin. You failed. You didn't, have billions of dollars in Bitcoin. Okay, but second step was Ethereum. Great. ETH got forked. We have all their technology. ETH was forked before. ETH Classic was the original. Guess what? Ethereum did better than the original Ethereum. The original Ethereum is nothing compared to Ethereum, right? ETH Classic, it's trash compared to Ethereum. So that tells you right there, the original doesn't have to be more valuable than the fork. The fork can do better than the original. And I think Pulsechain is that fork that has the mass of developers, community, believers, buyers that we can actually push. And it's not going to be like, hey, Pulsechain's $2,000. It's going to be, we have more gains than Ethereum has. And we're going to see it, in my opinion, because we're critical massive users, but we have an advantage. We can actually transact without shooting ourselves in the foot every time. So that gives us advertising. We can say we did 1 million transactions in a day. We can say we have a liquidity pool where thousands of people are in the LP because it only cost a penny to join the LP. So when you start to see total value locked on Pulsechain, which doesn't include Hex, which is pretty ridiculous because Hex is actually one of the most locked things out there in crypto. But anyways, when you see that, wow, a lot of people are participating in liquidity. Maybe you shouldn't, maybe you should, but guess what? It's not going to cost you $50 to $500 to join a liquidity pool just to set it up, right? So we have the advantage. Then, on the other hand, you have to think about the future of, well, even though you might not want to provide liquidity, and this is something to consider, you might need to do it. All of us might need to do 1% of our bags or something to build it up over the years because, like what you said, yeah, I got a 555. Well, how about the liquidity pool for Hex for the next 15 years and for building it out to where you're basically, I mean, are you going to try to live off the backs of the OA, or are you going to become a little piece of the OA? We're all going to become a little more generous and a little more benevolent to the community to say, I need to provide this a little bit. And when somebody wants to exit on my hands, that's okay because I'll buy it at that point from them. And I'm building this for the longer term. So Hex always has a good liquidity going. And now we can farm it too on Pulsex. So it's genius, right? Like I'm getting paid ink to do a little bit of benevolency. And yeah, you can get wrecked, but that's why I'm saying something like a 1%, or whatever, just you don't care about this money, but you want to support the ecosystem. And when I'm talking about supporting your coins that you believe in by helping people see that there's always a way to get in, always a way to get out, you're providing that service. And even if you're a small person, when we're all doing it together, it adds up to, strengthen the ecosystem. And
Definitely.
I think we have to do that for Hex, like, oh, let's just have OA provide all the liquidity and we'll try to exit. And it's not going to work. We're going to need to build a larger network. All of us are going to have to be involved and not just try to be a drain on the system. We're going to have to say, hey, I'm going to participate. And if you leave it in the LP for a decade, what is it going to look like? You'll probably be okay if it's if you're supporting Hex and if Hex does all right and you're creating Hex to do all right. So, for example, Hex whipsawing up and down like crazy, goes to $1, then goes back down to a penny in 2 hours. Well, that's going to happen if you don't have like a little fat LP in there. So we're going to get to that point where we want our yield that has accumulated for 5 years or 10 years. We want that yield to be valuable and we want it to actually go up over time. And to do that, you don't want an annihilating whipsaw. You want Hex to kind of trend upward over time. And part of that's building a a good liquidity pairing that's stable and is thick enough. So maybe Hex doesn't go up 10,000x 20 years from now, but guess what? It goes up 2% a year. That would be a miracle, right? That would be unbelievable. So, and we can build that if we're all participating now because the traders pay the fees. So if you're holding the LP for 5 or 10 years, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get all these fees for so many years and you're going to just have more and more, So anyway, benevolence, right? We're going to have to grow up as a community.
How do you build that?
Being selfish.
Insane whipsaw price chart and just have a gradual trend, or I don't know if the micro movements matter, but I mean, did you say we need to build a particular type of chart in order to have our chart be attractive to outside communities?
Yeah, I mean, that's our advertising, that's our billboards. So if you look at it, like this is our chance, I think, right now to prove X again that it's not just a down forever coin. Because yeah, if you look at the chart right now, people are just like, oh, okay, yeah, it used to be good, right? So, and that's hard for your onboarding. Like you go back to your onboards and you show it to them, and so people just expect, hey, in the bull market, everything's going to explode and it's going to be all great, But I think we could be a little more systematic, probably. Maybe partially DCAing helps with that. Maybe some of it's liquidity pools. But yeah, there's some benevolence. Yeah, but I'm just talking a little bit more long term. It's not feasible that so many people are going to be able to just pull out so much money without some of us being willing, probably towards the beginning of setting things up that's a little more benevolent. Magically, right? Eventually, the OA pulled back and said, all right, you guys, you want to dump the chart down to oblivion? Let's see how low you can go. Let's play the limbo because I can play this game longer than you, right?
It's my favorite game.
Richard Hart will wait you out. He will wait you out. He'll laugh as you're selling after 2 years of dumping. Yeah. I think our community built like a little bit of the chart on Pulse for like last year, higher lows, and then the SAC wallet came in, right? Like we kind of proved it first, built up some goodwill, like, hey, if you pump the chart, we're not going to jump on your head. We're not wrecked anymore, or whatever. We're longer term guys now. And then it's a test pump, I get it, but we got to liquidate a lot of people. But we also get to see maybe we can be up 2x and stay up 2x.
Totally, dude. If you gamify it, it's a game that's a combination of who has the hardest diamond hands and ow my balls.
That's a great show.
You cannot lose 100% of your coins. You got half of them for free. So what? You can maximum lose like your half of your other side, so a quarter or something. It's so minimal when you use a V2.
How about people that got Hex for free, trading against their Pulse they got for free?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Everybody got Hex for free, Ink for free, Pulsex airdrop. I mean, there's so much. Richard Hart just dumps free stuff on you. I mean, my entire sack bags on Pulsex, I got back in Ink for free. So it's like, oh, wow, I didn't expect that. That's cool.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking of free claimed Hex from Bitcoin. But yeah, I guess if you count your minted Hex as free.
Yeah. I mean, it's zero risk to take your Hex yield and put it into a liquidity pool.